Foggy headlights. So we're gonna go through on how to restore these guys. This is an 01 Ford Taurus, and as you can see, these headlights are horrible. This is not our usual car that we work on, but this is going to be a great example. Now you can see this one's a little bit clearer. This one we actually just polished. So just quick hit with some HD speed, improved, but it's still noticeably yellow and foggy.
Now last but not least, you want to make sure everything's safely secure. So in the case of this old baby, these hood latches are shot. So we put a broom in the middle. That is right, we are top notch when it comes to safety. Okay, in all honesty, it's really solid. But hey, let's get forward to how to clean these headlights.
So first and foremost, get some tape, painter's tape. What we're going to do is we're going to tape off all the way around all the painted areas. This is assuming that you're not going to remove the headlight. That's obviously the best way to do is if you can pull the headlight, put it in a vice grip, hey, you're going to have a lot more access to these corners and things like that, but it is a little bit more work and you got to have a vice on hand. So if you don't, then you're going to leave it in the car, painter's tape. From there, we will be sanding it. Now we have multiple grits of sandpaper here. These are actually discs, so like so. And what we're going to have is we're going to start out with something aggressive like 500 grit, going to go to 800 grit, we've got 1500, and then we got 3000, and then we'll work with our compound to remove the sanding marks. If you have polishers, more power to you, is going to make your job a lot easier. This is just a little cheapie from Harbor Freight. This is a more expensive dual action one from Rupus. This is actually a rotary mode, so this is going to do the majority of the cutting of the sanding marks. It's going to zip those out pretty quickly. We're going to get some good clarity. If you want to refine it further, you have the DA. You can also sand with one of these if you want to. Thus the discs being able to fit onto there. I'm going to try to show you by hand and by machine as far as what options we have. By hand, we have one of these. It's just a little puck basically that you can put your sanding disc onto, and that will fit like so. And of course, if you don't have discs, you can always get sandpaper. But the main thing that's important is to get the proper grits, because a lot of times people will try to start out with 1500, and if you're lucky it works, but when it's something this old and this faded, and you look closely, you can see like the line here where it's really starting to go. See how this little piece is a little bit different? We want to get this all uniform. So make sure you're clean first, of course, but now we're going to get to the sanding. You want to note when we sand, my strokes are what, maybe a couple inches? I'm not, doing the whole freaking headlight. We're working this down and we're looking and we're listening. We want to hear that right sound. In dry, it's pretty easy to get it, but you want to be able to hear the material actually abrading. You can see it here. We want that material to come off. Make sure you keep your surface clean and continue on. So something important to note is you want to clean out your sanding disc. We're removing material here. So we're removing old clear coat, some plastic. That's going to build up into your pad. As soon as this starts getting clunked up, it's going to reduce your cut, and you're not going to be able to sand too much more. So you'll want to do this either with air. You can do this with a junky towel. You can even do this with water once you get to the wet sanding discs. These are actually dry sanding discs, so not the best idea to use water with these. But if you use air or compressed air or old towel, that'll help to clean these out a lot. Now you see how we're getting nice even sanding scratches here? That's what we want. Now if you look down here, see how it's still a little blotchy? You want to make sure you even that out. Same thing even here. See this little bit of an outline right here? You want to make sure you knock that all the way down to get it nice and even. Otherwise, when you go to your next step, that's going to show through, and by the time you get it clear, you're going to have a nice scaly looking spot right here. That's what we want to try to avoid. Now you notice when you get down to corners like this, fuck, I just dropped my block. Okay, take 3. You'll notice when you get down to corners like this, something big like this is not exactly the best thing in the world to get to. I recommend picking up, if you're going to get into any amount of sanding, some Rid Sticks. These are by Jason Kilmer, and these are some of his beta version stuff that we actually got, but nevertheless they're outstanding. These actually have soft side, so these are pretty soft here, or you have more rigid ones that are a little bit more hard. or you have some that are hard on one side and soft on the other. In a case like this, something like this is going to fit in here perfectly. So all I'm going to do is take my sanding disc, wrap it around here, and I'm going to be able to get in and get that corner real nice. So we're looking pretty uniform right now. Now the last tip I recommend before you go on to your next grit, check out with the flashlight. We're going to come in here, and even though it looks really good, if you come down right in this corner here, see how we still got a little scaly look right there? So we're going to sand that area a little bit more just to get it to look a little bit more evenly hazed, kind of like the rest of it. Other than that, we're looking pretty sharp. Okay, so we got that spot touched up. We're now going to move on to our, it says 80, but it's actually 800 grit sandpaper. Now when if you're having a hard time remembering grits and what they actually mean, essentially the grit is referring to the number of abrasives within a square inch. So if you take something like this 3000, there's literally 3000 abrasive particles, if you will, within a square inch. So this is very smooth and almost feels as soft as skin. 1500, now there's literally half the amount of particles within a square inch than the 3000, which obviously means they have to be bigger. In this case, literally double the size. So this is a little bit more aggressive. When you're getting all the way down to like 800 or 500 grit, like our little spent piece down there, you're getting some pretty large abrasive pieces that are on here. And that's why we're able to remove material so quickly. If I tried to take that 3000 grit and do this, I'll be here till I'm about 82,000 years old. We don't want to do that. That's our finishing stuff right here. So when you're trying to level this stuff out, you want to go aggressive, but don't, go crazy on it to where you're gouging into the material. You just want to sand evenly, still have some really good technique, but go aggressive enough to where you are actually going to cut it. In some really bad cases, I've actually had to go with 320 grit to start out with, and then work my way to 500 and 800 and so on. But just keep that in mind. And that's how you that's how you know the difference between what's aggressive and what's not. Now, something you really want to make sure you pay attention to is, even though this all looks evenly dull, so to speak, it's not. It's very hard to tell the difference between a 500 and an 800 grit sanding mark, because actually down here I have not yet sanded, and along these edges I have not yet sanded with my 800. You need to remember that, because you want to go over these. Because once you start getting into these and you actually start to get the gloss to come back up, you'll notice these edges that you missed with like an 800 are going to still look dull, and you're like, what the hell happened? Well, you didn't reduce those sanding marks enough. So instead of trying to remove 800 grit sanding marks, you're trying to remove 500 grit sanding marks with these finer pads or finer pieces of paper. It's a lot more difficult to do. So make sure you spend a good amount of time with each step, and again, trace over these areas that you were not able to get with your larger diameter sanding disc or block or whatever you're using. Okay, so we're finished with our 800 grit. I'm going to move up to a 1500 grit now. Now, if you look at these discs compared to the other one, this one actually has a different laminate on it. So if you look at these guys, kind of see a little gloss there, and you compare it to our other one, it's fairly flat. These are meant to be used dry. These you can use damp or wet. I'm going to use it damp in this case, so we're going to have a little bit of lubrication. It's just going to help it to be a little bit smoother. One thing you will want to do for sure though is make sure you use an interface pad like this, because if we go directly onto a backing plate, this is hard, this is rigid, it's very easy for us to dig into an edge, then we get a nice gouge in our plastic. It's not going to be the end of the world. You can still sand and feather it out, but it's going to create more work, or it's just going to be an ugly spot. So make sure you have that nice soft foam interface pad. This one is from 3M. Meguiars makes them. Now you want to make sure you get your surface clean before each sanding step. So in this case, we're actually just going to use some isopropyl alcohol. This is going to help to remove any of the residue left behind. Look at that. It looks clear already, right? Just leave it wet. No. So the other reason you want to make sure it's clean is because you don't want any big leftover clumps of debris getting into your next sanding step, because again, it'll create gouges. Now we're going to move forward with our sanding disc. Now when I say damp, I'm talking damp. Like, we don't need, this is just straight water. Look, it says water even. That's how you know I'm not lying to you. So you just want to, not much more than that. Get your pad. Now you're good. Now we're going to go up here and try to do this one hand to see how skilled I am. Now this is a dual action polisher. We're not using a rotary here. This is a dual action. And we just need to go. You don't need to go super fast. You can see how much of a clarity difference it's making already. Now when you start to dry out, you're going to want to have more liquid. I need more hands. But again, let's just look at just the section that we did right here. Even after we dry out, you can see the bulb now. We're starting to get clarity because again, we're doing a finer grit now. Same idea as polishing paint, just a little bit more aggressive right now. So we're gonna get this entire thing to look like that. Then we'll move up to our 3000. Second thing, even though we got tape here, you still want to be careful. You can bust through this. You can see I hit a little bit here, but I didn't bust through. And that's why I tape, is because you don't have as much control by the machine because it's actually oscillating. Secondly, you don't want to just go ham on the tape because you start getting glue residue in your sanding disc, and that glue residue is going to end up on here, and it's just a big mess. Same idea when you're polishing paint. A lot of times you have to tape off trim, and if you hit that a little bit with your pad, guess what? It's going to go and create glue residue on every freaking thing. So try to be careful around that. It's there for safety, but don't just go at it. Anyway, we're gonna switch up to our 3000 grit. Now, as you can see, this guy has been used before, and we're gonna use it again. Now, if we were working on paint here, go straight to a fresh one. But for some headlights, and I know I might get some flack for this, but for some headlights, you can use a disc, especially in a small area, on a few sets. It's still going to do the job, and I'll show you here in a second. We will get plenty of improvement out of this. So after a quick hit of 3000 in this section here, yeah, that's just 3000 grit sandpaper. You can see we have a ton of clarity right now. Or as a car wash people would say, we're done. No, we're not done. We're going to continue to 3000 all the way around, then we're going to compound this. But again, this is just to show you how fine that 3000 grit sandpaper really is. You can actually get it to look fairly clear, especially when you're comparing to what we started with, just by sanding it. So, and it's so smooth, it's so nice. I could just, yeah, that's nice. All right, we're done with 3000 now. Quick side note, if you're doing this with a machine, it gets freaking messy on everything. It's probably on me as well somewhere. So be prepared for that if you're gonna do it with a machine. Obviously introduce water to the situation, slingage. Second thing, when you start doing this by hand, if you drop this thing, I guarantee you it will hit the floor and roll under the car. Likely right in the dead center where you'll need a broom or a stick or Stretch Armstrong or something to be able to reach it. So don't drop it. It always rolls under the middle of the car. All right, after that disclaimer, let's get on to the rotary. So we have a CarPro flash pad here. This is a you can tell it's my headlight pad. It's a little beat up, but it does the job. These are very stiff pads, which is what we want right now to really cut the out of these things. A wool pad will work well as option 2. Compound wise, one of my old bottles, we're going to use some Meguiars M100. So this is their compound. Now you can get some ultimate compound over the counter, will do the job, but M100, super good product for paint, for headlights, for whatever. It's worked really well with the rotary. All right, guys. Mission accomplished. We're looking pretty clear. So just to review, we did 500 grit, 800 grit, 1500, and 3000. And then we compounded with a rotary, and then I did another compound with a DA just to remove any buffer trails that might have been in there, which honestly I really didn't see any. Now you're going to, again, want to go back to your alcohol and clean the hell out of these things. You want to remove all the compound, you want to get them squeaky clean, and then we're going to apply our protection on top of it. Now if you don't have something like Dlux, you can use a wax or sealant, but you're going to want to reapply that continuously, like every couple of months, to make sure these don't yellow up again. That's why something like a plastic coating like Dlux is going to be very helpful, because it will last for years. You don't got to worry about redoing it every couple of months. All right, CarPro Dlux. So as you can see, it is a plastic and wheel protection. I personally prefer it on plastics. It works really well on it. So obviously these are plastic. All we're going to do is apply some of this makeup pad here and go over it quite generously, but not too ridiculous amount. I'll show you how to do that here real quick. We have about 10 to 12 drops on here, and you can see it applying here. And I will just pretty much go over edges first, since that's the easiest spot to miss. And then we're going to work into our middle. Now if you start to see it thin out some, you'll want to apply a little bit more. And want to work it in until it's almost completely transparent. You might see a little bit of hazing left, but that will flash out. If you start to dry out like that, we're going to add a little bit more. The easiest spot for that fading to start again, I can't emphasize this enough, is along your edges, especially the top part here, because that's going to get hit by the sun. Make sure you put a decent layer up there, because you don't want all this hard work to start going in reverse just because you didn't put enough protection on it.
So something I really want to emphasize here, and please do not take this lightly, but you do not want to mess this up. You do not want to be overly aggressive when cleaning your headlights going out. You don't want to use, a really stiff sponge, or I've seen people use Brillo pads. God forbid if you get your hands on some steel wool. I don't even want to talk about that. But you do not need to be aggressive cleaning these. The Dlux that we just put on this is going to help bugs and grime clean off a lot easier. So your maintenance is going to be super, super simple. And if you do need any help, then just get a little bit of bug cleaner. And you can spray it on it, help to dissolve the bugs, and then they should wipe right off. But as long as you maintain these properly, you're not super aggressive with them, you should have no problem keeping these looking like this for years to come. So again, be gentle when maintaining and enjoy it lasting for much longer because you did so.
Again, remember this was our quote-unquote better one. That's so nasty. And then our new one. Take a step back here. Now, you tell me, you want them just polished or you want them actually restored? Makes a nice big difference here. You can even see with the lights on, super foggy. Actually clear over here, even in the daylight. And if you look at the reflection here on our Audi, the one that we did, you can actually see the light beam hitting it, whereas this guy, you can't even see for the most part where the light beam's hitting. Makes a big difference in visibility. Hello, Isaiah Shoes.
So after we did the main recording here, I went ahead and finished up the other headlight to match this one. So you can see this guy turned out nice and clear. The Dlux is dry on it. I usually recommend letting the coating set for about an hour before you take it outside and actually drive it, or park it in the sun, it'll dry even quicker. Now you'll note on this headlight, look closely. See the water spotting? That's not on the outside, it's actually on the inside. So sometimes you will run into situations where something's gotten on the inside and done a little bit of damage and you cannot clear it up. You just have to accept these things and move on. Other than that, I think we look very, very good, and I appreciate you guys coming in to check it out.